Now we are on the 9th of the now we're on the 9th of January 2026, the year that the United Opposition made a promise to the Kenyan people that support them, that this is the year that they want to figure out who will become the compromise candidate in the United Opposition camp and who are they going to rally behind. Now, as this is happening, a division is very imminent, and this division is already happening where the Democratic Party leader, Honorable Justin Muturi, has actually called upon the United Opposition co-principals to actually declare the compromise candidate soon. In the statements that were made by the Democratic Party leader, Honorable Justin Muturi, he said that the United Opposition will declare the presidential candidate soon, saying that personal ambitions, of course, should not overplay national interest, and saying that there is need to declare who is the presidential candidate soon so that campaigns and national mobilization can begin behind that particular person. Now, you remember very well that towards the end of the previous year, after the 27th by-elections were held in November last year, something happened. The overwhelming support that existed for the United Opposition's one co-principal, Rigathi Gachagua, somehow shifted towards Kalonzo Musyoka, and a lot of focus now was put at Kalonzo Musyoka as a possible individual that can actually become the presidential candidate for the United Opposition in 2027 election. To even support this, President William Ruto himself started attacking Honorable Kalonzo directly in political rallies as an individual that was attacking an opponent and was of course not attacking the United Opposition. Prior to that, President William Ruto used to attack the United Opposition on grounds of not having any agenda set for the Kenyan people, but after the 27th November by-election towards the end of the previous year, his attacks were aimed at Kalonzo individually as a possible opponent. Now we're walking into 2026, and this is the 9th day, of course, of the first month of this year, and Honorable Kalonzo himself has declared the need, alongside Justin Muturi, to have the presidential flag bearer actually announced early. According to the statements of Honorable Kalonzo, he'd want the flag bearer to be announced before March this year. That's before March this year. That just leaves us with around less than 2 months for this deliberation to actually take place and this candidate be declared. Now, Honorable Justin Muturi has said that these are conversations that are already going on in very high level meetings within the coalition to ensure who is the presidential candidate for the United Opposition and when will he be announced. Rigathi Gachagua, who is being touted now as the chief of the United Opposition, and we said in our earlier episodes here yesterday that even in meetings of equals, there are individuals that appear to be more equal than the others, have now said that there is no need to declare presidential candidate as early as March, and perhaps there might not even be need to declare presidential candidate by December this year, saying that Kibaki's election had Kibaki being declared just 2 months and 13 days to the general election. Now, Rigathi Gachagua says that to not give an opportunity for President William Ruto to harass and of course hurt this particular presidential candidate, there is need to declare this particular presidential candidate just about 3 months to the major elections in 2027. Now, the statements of Gachagua has been taken twofold. One, as a very good warning and caution ahead of the weakening of the United Opposition by declaring a leader now that will give President William Ruto enough time to actually attack one individual at the expense of attacking the entire group ahead of the 2027 major polls, which makes sense. But another angle to it now seems that it is a concealment of self-interest, because Rigathi Gachagua believes that between now and next year, around May, will give him enough time to negotiate as the guy that the United Opposition should rally behind. And so this time is something that he needs individually to put his house in order after the failures that came from the United Opposition come, specifically the Mbeere North one, which was a test of his mightiness within the mountain area. So Rigathi is using this particular time between now and 2027 to work on himself and on his support base, so that when the table meets to consult and discuss, of course, he presents himself as the candidate. Ladies and gentlemen, to back this particular statement is the fact that yesterday, while he was at Gikomba Market, Honorable Rigathi Gachagua declared that dawa ya Kasongo ni yeye, and said that he's fit enough to become the presidential candidate in 2027, saying that there is no one who can actually deal with President William Ruto other than himself, even within the United Opposition. opposition. So this just reinforces the talk that as much as they are presenting themselves as a meeting of equals, there are other individuals that feel more equal than others and already feel that even within the camp there is no fit candidate that can actually oust his influence between now and that time, delaying this particular decision for a time when he feels that his influence will have been sufficient. Now, Honorable Justin Muturi has commented on these things. Justin B. Muturi has said that it should not get to a point where personal interest, of course, is overriding national interest. And you know, Honorable Justin Muturi is the closest ally within the united opposition to Rigathi Gachagua. So this statement being made by Justin Muturi has a potency of showing that as much as there is high-level conversations and meetings going on within the coalition, there have also high-level trust and, of course, discussions of personal interest being put ahead of national interest in those particular meetings. So if you're joining the People's Mirror for the first time, please hit the subscribe button so that we keep detailing for you stories like this on a daily, but also so that you help us hit our target of 5,000 subscribers mark by the end of this month. Now, that is the story we want to detail for you in full from the beginning to end on what is going to happen for the united opposition. Are they postponing a plan to counter Ruto, or is it personal interest overriding national interest? But the most interesting part where we want to put our analysis or center it around is the infights that now reveal Gachagua as the guy that opposes both Matiang'i and Kalonzo's presidency within the united opposition structure that ought to be a meeting of equals in 2026 and beyond. Now, the united opposition have begun the year adjusting their campaigns, of course, accordingly. They're taking 2026 and not 2027, of course, as a make or break here. They know that this is the year that their strategy, their unity and their creativity is going to be put to test. And the way they do out of this year in terms of their unity, the way they do out of this year in terms of their strategy, and the way the united opposition will do this year in terms of their creativity will be a very huge determinant on how they will face the ballot in 2027. So they are, of course, very aware that how they conclude this 2026, as I've said, will make a determination on whether by the time they get in the ballot in 2026 there will be a strong force with one presidential candidate countering President William Ruto's policies in that ballot, or there will be a weak shell behind one presidential candidate, yet there is a lot of disunity amongst themselves that they cannot even rally support behind their own individual candidate, or even worse, there will have been a divided united opposition where each party will be fronting its own candidate in the ballot against President William Ruto. Now, the united opposition is aware of previous instances where an incumbent had won an election because of the divisions of the united opposition, irrespective of the widespread dissatisfaction that might have occurred across the nation. So you can say that we don't like President William Ruto. If you don't like President William Ruto, you can say that, and you can say that we want President William Ruto out of 2027, okay? And then you can say that we want the united opposition to do that for us. And by the time you are getting to the end of 2026, the united opposition is divided, that each of them have a presidential candidate from the party as a principal, as the co-principal as they are right now. Each of them go as a presidential candidate. And what eventually happens is that because they have fragmented those votes, they all lose and the incumbent wins. Now, this is something that has happened before and the united opposition is aware of it. That is why 2026 is a very key year for them in terms of their unity, in terms of their strategy, and in terms of their creativity. Of course, we have not taken much time looking at this united opposition as one body. We have often just discussed what is coming out of individual statements that are made by co-principals within the party, but it is very important to understand them as a one collective body and their strategy, unity and creativity as such, of course, ahead of the major elections. Now, they believe that this year will expose, of course, a hollow presidency that is based on weakening of institutions, inflated promises, and what now they term as impunity. And whereas President William Ruto is receiving this particular new year with a lot of aspirations, he's promising implementation of policy statements that he had made before. He's promising cutting unemployment by half by the time this year comes to an end. He's promising the completion of Talanta Stadium, now Raila Amolo Odinga Stadium. He's even promising the completion of course, the Bomas of Kenya Conference Facility, whose construction is currently going on. He's opening the Mau Summit roads and all these additional roads. The united opposition are looking at this new year as one year that will show or expose a whole presidency that is based on impunity and on inflated promises that have not been delivered, and of course on destroyed and weakened institutions. They are more aware that in this year strategy will be required more than sloganeering. And of course this has been an effect in the previous year where President William Ruto has blamed them collectively as a cohort that does not offer an alternative to the Kenyan people but keeps sloganeering one term without policy statements. Now they have since defended their statements before as a united opposition, saying that it is not time to actually give policies yet because they are not in government. And on sloganeering they have said it is not Ruto's business to actually tell them how to do politics. Now they are saying that they are aware, of course, this year that strategy will be needed now in the year 2026 more than sloganeering, and as a united opposition they are working towards developing that strategy. Sources now reveal that a more deliberate, multi-layered plan of undermining the government delivery narrative while presenting the united opposition as a credible alternative is their plan within 2026. So how will this happen? If we are talking about a deliberate multi-layered plan of discrediting a narrative while offering an alternative, it requires that first you have to look at the narrative the way it is being presented. Look at what is Ruto saying. He's talking about Singapore. Okay, what has happened that shows that Ruto cannot deliver Singapore? Or what is the alternative to Kenyans that can work other than Singapore? If he's talking about roads, stadiums, conference facilities, essentially what I'm saying is that if this plan of the united opposition is to work in 2026, then it means they must have a lot of group of experts taking a look at Ruto's narrative and developing a paper that is contrary to Ruto's narrative, that offers alternative to what Ruto is offering. So if Ruto is offering Singapore, for example, then they need to look at another country like Japan that has done well and whose economy was just like Kenyan's economy sometimes back, and do a comparison why we should go to Japan instead of going to Singapore. When they're talking about these policy structures that Ruto has created that do not work, then this will call upon them to come up with better policy frameworks that will be compared against President William Ruto's policy, and the Kenyan people will decide which policy is best fit for them in the 2027 ballot. So they will now seek to turn the daily public frustrations into credible alternative vision of the government. And of course, if there are any daily frustrations that are coming out of President William Ruto's government, then the united opposition now seek to use it as an opportunity to turn that particular frustration into a vision that they can deliver in their government in 2027. So these are some of the things that they're looking forward to doing in 2026 from what sources closer to the united opposition now reveal. They are directly sending invites for other chief opposition figures who are not in the united opposition. That is also another plan they want to do this year. You remember Gachagua hinted that they are still waiting for more people to come, including cabinet secretaries that he says talk to him at night, and permanent secretaries that he says talk to him at night, who would also still want to jump ship from Ruto's government when the time is right. He also hinted waiting for the Sifona's camp, which we don't know how that will go. But from sources closer to the united opposition, it shows now they are waiting for individuals like Maraga, Okiya Omtata, Jimmy Wanjigi. These are the components of the opposition that do not identify as united opposition, but have actually been active in discrediting the way this particular government is being run. So they are saying that this is the year that they will be sending direct invites for these other chief opposition figures who are not in the united opposition, so that moving into 2027, after 2026 is over, it will be one big umbrella called the opposition, and there will be no minions of other oppositions away from the united opposition. So of course, ladies and gentlemen, if you take a look at all these things they are saying they want to do, you can easily conclude that their approach to 2027 politics has been a very interesting one so far, with more focus put on a call for grassroots level delivering, while they are shying away from making a determination on who is the presidential king. We're just using examples from the speech that was made by Rigathi Gachagua, and you could hear he was asking his people to give him over 150 askaris. Now he called them askaris, but what he meant is people from his own DCP party from the mountain who are actually going trying to advocate for the betterment of the community. So they have gone back to the agreement that they had prior. Go back to your people, consolidate your base, and come back. We have this conversation in 2026. For Rigathi Gachagua is saying, let us not talk about who is even the presidential candidate yet. Let us first infiltrate the DCP party within the mountain so that you give me over 150 askaris to negotiate with in the table. At the same time, we are having Natembeya also from the other side saying that let us consolidate Trans Nzoia and Luhya Nation together ahead of 2027 so that when we meet in the table 2027, we have numbers. We have seen Nyaribo being, of course, in crossroads, and we have detailed here at the People's Mirror, because if you take a look at the Gusii community, they are only centered around two counties, that is the Kisii County and of course the Nyamira County. So the Kisii County is, of course, Simbarati is with this broad-based arrangement. The Nyamira part needs to be the backyard of Okengo Matiang'i in the 2027 decisions, but Nyaribo is now cut short in a crossroad between following President William Ruto with Simbarati as one united Gusii community, or going the Matiang'i way as the flag bearer of the community. So Martha is also doing the media campaigns and on. You can say entirely that all these individuals are back to their grassroots and they are trying to consolidate support from their own grassroots ahead of 2027. But while all this preparation is happening, the united opposition are still waiting to reach on the table, either in 2026 or in 2027 now that this particular dates keep shifting, to decide who among them is the most fit equal to actually become a presidential candidate. Now, away from an overall look of how they are walking into the 2027 political scheme, it is also very important to now point out these silent infights that are happening within the party from a personality point of view. Because now the former deputy president Rigathi Gachagua is now being touted as the opposition chief. He is making statements as if he's the overall leader of the united opposition. As recent as the statements that he made yesterday, Rigathi Gachagua now says that there is no fit person that is Dawaya Kasongo other than him in the 2027 conversation. So now, even if you're still waiting for a united opposition to arrive at a compromise and give us a leader, it seems that certain individuals within the united opposition are already portraying themselves as that particular leader. And Rigathi's position is unsettling individuals within the united opposition. Kalonzo, for example, Kalonzo's stars, the way we said, was very bright towards the end of the previous year. When you're talking of this new year, Kalonzo has been oddly quiet. Now, we thought towards the end of the year that the united opposition would have started this new fresh year championing for Kalonzo's interest. But what we are seeing in this new fresh year is that a new united opposition that does not speak holistically, but one candidate who the people felt that might not be in the ballot in 2027 because of this particular court battles. But Rigathi Gachagua has since downplayed the court battles, saying that the court battles cannot bar him from being the presidential candidate. Now, Rigathi, who seemed as an individual who was consolidating support for the united opposition previous year, now identifies or portrays himself as the key individual for the united opposition this year. Now, this has ruffled people negatively. Rigathi has rebuked the president, saying that Ruto does not have a moral authority to, of course, set an agenda for them, saying that when it comes to timelines of declaring when they would want a presidential campaign, it will not be a Ruto pressured idea, but it will be a united opposition idea. Of course, these are statements that are being made to distance themselves from the statements that the united opposition have been asked to make, considering whether or not this announcement will be made this year or next year. So why are you concerned with our uselessness? Gachagua fires at Ruto, while Justin Muturi believes that the united opposition should unveil their candidate as soon and begin nationwide campaigns. Rigathi believes that such move will give Ruto an upper hand to taunt their settled candidate. So this has led to, of course, a disconnect between those two principles. While Kalonzo and Honorable Honorable JB Muturi feel like there is a need to declare who is the presidential candidate as early as in the first quarter of 2026, Rigathi Gachagua feels like that is a very premature move and a declaration should be made in the mid-quarter of 2027. Now, Kalonzo and Gachagua disagrees on that flag bearer announcement date. Rigathi Rigathi, who has keenly been watching Kalonzo's rise and the attacks aimed at him, still have hope that over the months he can still be settled upon. And of course, buying time until next year can be seen as one move that distracts Ruto, but on the other hand, one move that strengthens Rigathi Gachagua ahead of those particular negotiations. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been a pleasure recapping that for you. We will keep our eyes on the very soon that Justin Muturi said, whether this announcement will be made or not, and of course the decisions that will be coming out of the united opposition as a united camp. Keep it here in the People's Mirror until our next episode.